Welcome. In this unit, we are going to talk about allocating overhead or factory overhead. Now you're probably thinking like, gosh, we've been doing that since Module 3, and we have. In Modules 3 and 4, we allocated our factory overhead and we allocated it based on direct labor dollars. And we kept that consistent because we were learning other things and it made sense to do that. But the reality is, direct labor dollars isn't the only way you can allocate your overhead. You could use machine hours, you could tie it to different activities like your HR costs. You could allocate them by the number of employees you have. There's all different ways you could allocate. You could allocate based on the number of square feet of space a certain department's using. So in this unit, we are going to talk about some of the different ways we can allocate factory overhead. And we're going to really look at three different ways. We have a plant-wide rate, a departmental rate, and activity-based costing, or ABC. Let me write that. Which is where we're really going to spend the bulk of our time. Okay, so all of these are valid ways to allocate overhead. The first one, the plant-wide rate, that's what we've been doing this whole time. We have one rate for the entire manufacturing plant, right? Our rate was based on direct labor hours, but we could also use something like machine hours. And we want to pick, if we're going to use the direct plant-wide rate, we want to pick something that's indicative of our process. So if we have a process that is very manual and uses a lot of direct labor hours, for example, let's say we're making tamales, hand-rolled tamales, okay? We're going to have a bunch of people standing around a kitchen wrapping tamales, and that's going to be very direct labor driven. And so that's going to be a good way to select our plant-wide rate based on direct labor hours. But let's say we are Tesla. And Tesla is known for having highly automated plants. They have almost no real people in their manufacturing plant. So for Tesla, allocating based on direct labor hours or direct labor dollars would be a little silly, right? Because they've only got a couple people walking around. But to allocate by machine hours would make a lot more sense because everything they do in that factory is done by a machine, almost everything, by a robot or some sort of machine. So machine hours would be a much better way to select a plant-wide rate. Okay, the plant-wide rate is probably the least accurate of the three ways that we could allocate overhead, right? Because we have one rate for the whole plant. Like, what if we are making tamale Teslas, right? And so we've got one department that's making tamales and another department that's turning them into cars using a lot of automation. Our tamale Teslas would have a combination of rates. And so we'd have one department that was more labor heavy and one that was more machine hour heavy. And so to use one plant-wide rate probably wouldn't be a great way to allocate our factory overhead. So why do we use it? Because it's super easy, right? We pick one rate, we do it across the whole department. We don't need any sort of fancy computer systems. It's very easy to figure out. And easy in business usually translates to cheap, okay? So we're not going to spend a lot of money. Now, if we want a little bit more granularity, we'll do the departmental rate. This is where we assign factory overhead costs by department. Instead of having one big, our entire plant has $100,000, we say, hey, Department A has $60,000 and Department B has $40,000, okay? Now we can have a different rate but for each department. So again, if we're making tamale Teslas, our tamale department can allocate their factory overhead, their $60,000, by direct labor dollars or direct labor hours because they are a labor intensive department. Department B, where we're actually turning our tamales into cars, can have allocate based on machine hours. Their $40,000 will be allocated based on machine hours because they're a very technology, automated, driven department, okay? So as you can see, the departmental rate is going to be a little more accurate. It still assumes that within each department, we have one common driver, right? Our whole department is very manual and direct labor driven. Our whole department is very automated and machine hour driven, right? We may have a mix of this in our departments, so we may not really be truly capturing our fixed overhead costs and assigning them as accurately as we could by using activity-based costing, which we'll get to. But it's going to give us a little more flexibility than just using plant-wide rate. It's going to be a little more complex because we're going to have to track these rates by department. If we have 2 departments, it's not that much more complex. If we have 15 departments, now it gets a little more. If we've got 3,700 departments, you can see we're like, ooh, need a computer system. But in general, it's still going to be fairly simple. It's still going to be fairly cheap. I would say this is kind of the middle, mama bear, or I guess, is mama bear the middle? I'm not sure. The middle option, okay? The third option is activity-based costing. Activity-based costing, we really get into it, okay? So we start looking, instead of having a plant-wide rate or a rate for each department, we start looking at what are the activities that drive the costs, okay? Why do we have costs related to our machines, right? So maybe they're costs like depreciation on our robots or maintenance on our automated facilities. Well, we have those because we're using automation, and machine hours is a really great way to allocate those costs. We also have rent. Well, a great way to allocate rent was based on the amount of square footage that's being used to make each product. If we have workers' comp insurance, that is partially driven by the number of on-site accidents we have. Maybe we allocate that by the accident rate for each of the departments and then get that into the product through that rate, okay? So for each of our factory overhead costs, we say, well, what drives this cost? And then we're going to estimate how much of that driver, how many machine hours we're going to use, and we're going to allocate that way. Now, as you can imagine, if we have 2 or 3 activities, we could probably do this on a piece of paper, but in a plant, we might have 100 activities. We might have 1,000 activities. This is not something you want to attempt with a paper and pencil. This is computer work, okay? And we're probably going to buy a specialized computer system or computer program that's going to be able to figure out all of these rates and then figure out for each product how much of all of these different activity drivers it uses. So this product used this much machine hours and it used this much, had this many accidents and used this much square footage, and put it all together to allocate it, okay? So this is like magic behind the scenes, pull back the curtain. Do not try this on your own at home, well, except what we're gonna do in this unit. You're gonna want a computer system. So what does this mean for advantages and disadvantages? It means that this is not cheap. We have got to invest people, we've got to invest in the technology to get it done. But it's probably going to give us our most accurate product costs, because we'll really understand, right, if making, making really sharp knives drives up our workers' comp costs, and we also make spoons, well, we want to know that making the knives is actually a lot more expensive than the spoons, even though maybe they have the exact same amount of direct materials, because of these additional accident costs. That's going to help us to make better decisions about pricing our product. And also, when we start talking about product mix, in the next module, I know you can't wait, but you're going to have to wait, we can have a better idea of what things are really costing us to make, okay? So 3, plant-wide rate, departmental rate, activity-based costing, they all have their advantages and disadvantages. You, the manager, are going to have to decide what works best for your production environment. And now we're going to go through some exercises. I'm going to show you how to do the calculations and how to use each of these 3. And then we're going to rock and roll. All right, see you in the videos. Bye.